How many of y'all in here? This is your first go round in. I tell you what, I want you to come up here and swap out with him. Yeah, come on. Come on. How many of y'all, this is your first go round in treatment? Keep your hand up, let me see. How many of y'all been to treatment before? All right. A couple of things that really helped me in early recovery, like when I was sitting where you sit, is they explained a couple of things to me about the big book. Sort of explained how it was laid out, and they sort of told me that to somebody like me, this was a book of algebra written in Japanese. Now, if I told you, hey, this book is written in algebra, in Japanese, and it's a book of algebra, and if you learn it, it'll save your life and your daughter's. And then I told you, I said, what are the chances of you being able to decipher this book of algebra written in Japanese to save you and your daughter's life? What would you say the chances would be? 2, none. Now, if I told you I'm an interpreter of Japanese and algebra, and I can help you get this to save you and your daughter's life, what would you say? Yeah. Now, would I have to tell you what to do, or would you be right on my side everywhere I went? See, how many of y'all get this book, and it's pretty much Greek to you? So when I first got this book, it was like a book of algebra written in Japanese. And it really didn't interest me that much. Now, when they sort of told me how the book was laid out, and they gave me a few little tips about the book, it started to make a little sense. Now, if you turn your big book to the table of contents, okay, that's in the front of the book. Now, I'm going to show you how the book's laid out. And if you're interested in this, which I know y'all all are, it's going to help you when you get ready to study this book. Now, if you have a pen, get your pen and do this. If you don't have a pen, after class, you're really interested, get it from your neighbor. Okay? Now, if you take the first 4 chapters, if you have a 4th edition, who has a 3rd edition?
Not no more.
Okay. If you take the first 5 chapters, preface all the way to forward to the 4th edition, and you bracket those together, that's the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? That's what they're trying to get across to you. If you take the doctor's opinion and Bill's story and bracket those 2 together, that's step 1. Now, look up here a minute. The doctor's opinion tells you about this. Bill's story tells you about somebody who's got this and their life has become very manageable. So those 2 chapters deal with step 1. All right, there is a solution, more about alcoholism and we agnostics. 3 chapters, all deal with step 2. Now, there is a solution. Tells you about a power greater than yourself. Okay? Now, there is a solution, tells you that. More on alcoholism. Tells you about the insanity of putting the first one in. And we agnostics deals with one thing, the power of believing. So 3 chapters all deal with stealth. That should tell you a little something. If they take 3 chapters and devote them all to one damn step, that's pretty damn important.
So you said 2, 3, and 4? 4, 3.
There is a solution. More on alcoholism. We agnostics all deal with step 2. How it works. Steps 3 and 4. Into action is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then the last one, working with others, is all step 12. So that's how the book's laid out. Now, I want you to look up here. Young man, did they give you a big book? When did you get here? Huh? How old are you? About 8? Huh? Same thing. Take your chair, pick your chair up, and sit it next to him in the front row. Okay, look up here. Y'all look up here. How many of y'all, when y'all get this book, okay, when y'all get this book, okay, look up here. Y'all can do that later. They call this the big book. Reason they call it that is a big damn book. Now, this whole book, is this the whole program of AA? No. Look, the first 103 pages, that's the program of AA. Look, this right here, this is the directions to take those steps. Now, all this other stuff is crap. That's what it is. But it's good crap. But what it is crap. That's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, they put stories in the back. And most of y'all, that's what y'all want to go read. Instead of, that's where your nose needs to be. Now, they put the stories in the back for a reason. When this first started, there wasn't many meetings to go to. So they put meetings in print. You don't have that problem today because they have a lot of meetings for us to go to now. Now, the first people who started this, the first 40, that grew to 100 while the book was being written, they didn't have a lot of meetings to go to. So that should tell you something. They didn't get sober and change in the meetings. They got sober and changed through the steps. Now, how many of y'all in here? This is of no interest to you. Be honest with yourself. Look, if this was interesting to you, every time you got a spare moment, you know where your nose would be? Right there. Because see, this is going to save yours and your daughter's life. It's going to save your life. And the way it's going to save it is going to change it. Now, this is a recipe to put your life back in proper order. And once your life is back in proper order, you can start living again. And anybody who's living wouldn't think of putting anything in them to change the way they feel. You guys have not lived in a long time. What you've been doing is existing. And that shit sucks. It sucks so bad, you got to put something in you to change the way you feel. That's how bad it sucks. Now, how do you think I know that?
Been there, done that.
Now, for a long time, guess what I was not interested in? Ag. Didn't want nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing. Because I really didn't think I had a problem. Like some of y'all don't. How many of y'all go, well, you know, I just had some bad luck. Luck has nothing to do with nothing. If you want to know what luck is, this college football season, when it rolls up, watch the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They normally play the first game on NBC. And at halftime, they got this little green son of a bitch called a leprechaun. He runs up and down the sideline. That's luck. You ain't here by mistake. Something's up with you. And what's up with you ain't what you think's up with you. If you ended up in here, something's up. Now, how many of y'all, like me, tried to solve my little problem on my own? Now, I want you to ask yourself this. The more you try on your own, does it get better or worse? Worse. Ain't that fucking crazy? The more you try, the worse it gets. Now, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is actually an ass-backwards program. It has to be, because it deals with a bunch of ass-backwards people. Now, they tell me, in order to gain some power, I gotta surrender. Now that's fucking ass backwards. And they told me the more dependent I become on this power, the more independent I'll be. How many of y'all in this room depend on electricity? Now, is that a power greater than you? I promise you, if you took a paper clip and undid it and stuck both ends in that, it would be a power greater than you. Now, how many of y'all go hit that light switch or turn the air conditioner on or use the dryer? You question that power. I wonder where the fuck that came from. You just do it. Now, by you depending on electricity, does it actually make you a more independent person? Nope. Hell, it don't. Because it frees you up to do a lot of things you normally couldn't do. Now, by me depending on that other power, it actually makes me more independent. I can do shit I normally couldn't do, like a son, a brother, a father, a husband. So by me depending on something, it actually makes me more. Now, how many of y'all have ever looked at it that way? You think by depending on something, it actually makes you weak. That's how ass backwards you are. That's why the program works for us. Now, this right here is a recipe. Recipes are meant to be followed, and they give you precise, clear-cut direction. Now, let's say, what's your first name?
Joseph.
Joseph. Let's say Joseph's wife. You got a wife? Let's say his wife made a cheesecake, and he brought it up here and gave me a piece, and I took a bite of it, which I never fucking would. And I said, Joseph, that is the best damn cheesecake I've ever eaten in my life. Get me the recipe. So he goes back to his wife, the maker of the cheesecake, and she writes it out. Precise and clear cut how to make that cheesecake. Now, with my keen intellectual mind that I have, I'm going to make a better cheesecake. So I take the recipe she gave him to give to me, and the first thing says grease a cake pan. Well, I ain't got time for that shit. So I just get a cake pan. Her second suggestion says add a cup of sugar and 2 eggs. I like shit sweet. So I put 2 cups of sugar and 1 egg. Her third suggestion says blend it with the blender for 10 minutes. Now, which one of you guys has a blender? So I get a spoon and I slop it around for 5. Her last suggestion says bake it at 350 for 15 minutes. I broil it at 500 degrees for 8 minutes. I pull it out, I take a bite of it, and I go, that goddamn woman gave me the wrong recipe. Now, did she give me the wrong recipe?
No.
I just couldn't follow. Precise. Clear cut direction. Now, we've given you a recipe to put your life back in order so you can start living again. And most of y'all think y'all know better than this recipe. So what you try to do is incorporate your bullshit with this recipe. And you end up with a burnt down cheesecake. The ones of us who come in here and follow the recipe, we get a good cheesecake. Now, how many of y'all think y'all know everything about fucking anything and nobody can tell your ass nothing? You know so much. You have a seat at Woodlake. That's how much you know. You know how to get into institutions, because that's what this is. This is the Taj Mahal of institutions. Would you agree, Kendall? Is this institution better than the one you come from? Huh? Yeah, but this is an institution. Now, how many of y'all keep ending up in freaking institutions? How many of y'all want to quit ending up in them? How many of you guys keep ending up places you don't want to be? Watch this shit. With people you don't want to be with. Watch this shit. And you got to stay longer than you want to stay. That's your recipe. That's your recipe. And that shit sucks. It sucks. Some of you guys in here, 20, 25, 28, 30, 40, y'all want to be going any damn where you want to go, when you want to go, and with who you want to go with. But y'all keep ending up here in places like that. And when you get here, you go, I don't know why I ended up there. I do. Because you want to follow your recipe. Now, if you want to do that, can anybody make you stop? No. Fuck no. Look, judges, would y'all say they some powerful ass human beings? I would. Can they make you stop doing what you want to do? No. Hell no. And the reason they can't is because they're a human being. Can judges remove the obsession from us alcoholics? No. If they could, our prisons would be almost empty. The only human being who can make you stop doing what you want to do is you. And you have to get to a point where you say, I've had enough. I've had enough. Now, where I grew up in North Baton Rouge. And I grew up in the late 60s and through the 70s there. And if you don't know anything about Baton Rouge, North Baton Rouge, back then even, it was not a good place to grow up. You had to, you had to be able to hold your own. Now, I had an older brother. God bless him. He meant well. But he didn't have a fucking clue. And what he taught me growing up, if I ever hear that you gave up in a fight on the basketball court, football, if I ever hear that shit, I'm going to kick your little ass. So if I was in a fight beating the dog shit out of somebody and I let them up, when I got home, guess what my older brother was going to do?
Yeah.
That's right. And if I was getting my ass kicked and gave up, guess what he was going to do when I got home? So it was ingrained in me. Never, ever, ever give up. How many of y'all, that's sort of been ingrained in you? I come in here and the first thing they tell me I got to do, fucking give up. It went against everything I had been taught. Now, I started to ask myself some questions because I wanted to start getting honest with me. And I said, you know, how well is that actually working for you? Look, the way you believe, your idea, the way you think, how well is that working for you? But how many of y'all want to hold on to that? You want to do the same shit, but you want different results. If you got up and that door was padlocked, and every time you went up to it, you went, bam, bam. If you did it 20 times in a row, what would happen? The 21st time. Yeah. So if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same and worse. Because that old head's going to start to get raw after a while. But how many of y'all do that? You keep busting your head up on a damn door that ain't going to open, but you keep trying to get through it. And people go, hey, the fucking door's locked. And you go, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. And they watch you and they go, God, what is he doing? And they go, hey, what are you doing? And you go, nothing. What are you doing? How many of y'all come in here and you don't want nothing to do with this recipe because you're in love with yours? Now, what makes a person like me say, hey, I've had enough of my recipe. I want to try this one. I'm all in. What makes that happen? What do you think made me do that?
Realizing that
So it was called a thorough ass kicking. Look, when I was growing up, this little guy in my neighborhood got a hold of me, and he didn't whip my ass. He kicked that motherfucker. And when I saw him in the neighborhood, I didn't want no part of that damn action. And I was quiet as a church mouse around him. Now, a couple of guys in my neighborhood, we would tangle from time to time, and I might get the best of them. And then the next time they might get the best of me. They didn't kick my ass, they just mangled it every now and then. So every time I would see one of them, guess what I thought? I'm taking this time. Now, how many of y'all, drugs and alcohol, are just mangling you up a little bit? Just start. So guess what you think? I can get them this, I can take it this time. How many of y'all is kicking your damn ass now? But you keep fighting. Surrender, if you ever do it, is actually a beautiful thing. You know, the morning I surrendered, it was about 2 a.m. I had a cookie about that big. I had about 2 or 3 cases of Budweiser in front of me, and I went, done. Fucking done. The next morning, I'm in a treatment center. That's all they talk about. And when they started talking about this, I couldn't get enough. Every chance I got, my nose was in that. All them idiots I was in there with started running their bullshit. I got as far away from them as I could. Now, how many of y'all, every chance you get, your nose is in this while you're studying it? Or the only time you pick it up is when I make you. You ain't even got yours picked up now, do you? Well, fuck, it's too heavy, ain't it? It's a big book. Look, I'm telling you, 28 days. When you first come in here, it's going to seem like 28 years. The first 2 weeks are going to just go. When you finally come up and go, hey, fuck, this ain't too bad. You're only going to have about 2 weeks left. And it's going to fly by like that. And most of y'all waste about 2 good weeks before your head ever thinks about exiting your butthole. So the recipe is in the first 103 pages of the book. Those steps, the directions for them are right here. Look, you can't take the steps off the wall. The directions for them are in the book. To me, sometimes I think that's one of the worst things people did was put the steps on the wall. Because a lot of people try to work them off the wall. And the directions for them are in the book. The first time I ever saw those steps, you know what they reminded me of? Fucking pool rules.
Right.
At the YMCA.
Right.
And I broke every damn one of them. But how many of y'all try to take the steps off the wall? When the directions are in the book. All right. Yesterday, we covered some stuff. We're going to put a little bit about step 1 up here, and then we're moving on. Okay? Now, in step 1, they told you the problem when it comes to your using. Now, this is just a yes or no. Do you know what the problem is? Yes or no? Okay, what? No. Do you know?
No.
Yes or no? What?
I think
No.
No.
Physical allergy coupled with the mental obsession. Now, look, we talk a lot in here about 2 things. We talk a lot about the root of your trouble being self-will, and then we talk a lot about the problem when it comes to your using. And the 2 things are completely different. How many of y'all, this obsession has got you by, and the most nearest, dearest thing in your life, when the obsession kicks in, it acts like it's not even a concern to you. You like your freedom, don't you? Huh? And every night laying on that fucking bunk, how many times did you say, I'll never be back in this hellhole? How many? And when you got out, this thing said, hey, put some of that white shit up your nose. And if they'd have found out, you would have been right back where? Yeah, Well, not there. You'd probably been in Paris for a while, which probably is worse. See, how many of y'all, when the obsession kicks in, it overrules everything? Your freedom, kids, your family, your dog, your car, your job. It overrules everything. Now, if you have this obsession, what it keeps telling you is what? Put the first one in. So once you put the first one in, it becomes physical in. That bitch leaves for the moment. But now, the body is taking over. And the body's telling the mind what to do. Look, there's not a doubt in my mind. A lot of y'all sit through here for 28 days and you get a lot of information. But when it comes time to do the steps, you don't do anything. So you walk out of here with a head full of information and you don't have anything different except a head of information. Now, for an alcoholic, a head full of information and a belly full of dope, it ain't a good mix. If you took two alcoholics, one knew that book front to back but didn't do it, and the other one ain't never fucking heard of a big book, and they both got drunk and passed out under a table. When they came to, the only difference would be one would know why he fucking ended up under the table, and the other one wouldn't. And the crazy part is the one that knows why he ended up under the table is worse off than the one that don't know. I mean, y'all can do treatment standing on your fucking head. And you got all this information, but you put none of it into action. None of it. Now, if you put these two things together, and that's what you have accomplished so far, you have this obsession that you can't stay stopped. No matter the consequences, what you say, who asks you, pleads, and begs you. And then you take the allergy. Every time you dump one in, it's a wrap. And you end up on a spree. Hoping and praying when you come up for air, nobody knows. You know, us alcoholics, when we out there using, we don't give a fuck who knows. But when we sober up, we don't want nobody to know. It's crazy how we are. Now, if you put these two things together, they render you powerless. Now, how many of y'all know who Stevie Wonder is? Stevie Wonder is a blind musician. Stevie Wonder could see that if you are, it would take to solve your problem. And y'all can see very good, and most of y'all can't see that. What a blind man could. Now, when we start talking to you about this power, how many of y'all go, boom? You shut your mind to it. And most of y'all do because you think you already got the power. If you had it, how many of y'all would have ended up in here on your own? Hey, I'll go to Woodlake. It's going marvelous for me. How many of y'all did that? So I would say you probably ain't got the damn power. Now, this word right here, believing. Believing is a powerful ass word. What you believe is exactly what you're going to do. Now, a lot of y'all believe y'all can do what y'all want, break the law, and get away with it. They got a lot of police officers who believe they can catch your ass. Now, what do you believe? Say, what do you believe? Because that's why you're sitting in here based on what you believe. Believing is a powerful ass word. Now, this process right here, believe, decide, action, results, faith. That process right there, you use it in everything you do. And you use it a bunch of times during the day. Now, before I do anything, a belief is a suspicion I have before I do something. Now, after I do it, not a belief anymore. It would be faith. How many of y'all actually know what faith means? What's it mean? No. What?
No.
Faith means to know. Now, how many of y'all, the very first time you ever had dope in your hand, you never used it, you just have it in your hand, did you know what it could do? There's no way you could have. You had never used it. Now, based on a belief, how many of y'all, the first time the word drugs or alcohol entered your ear, at that split second, how many of y'all used it? None of y'all. That shit got in your head and rattled around for a while, and you started to believe it very strongly that you were going to try it, right? Now, based off of that belief, you made decisions. You took, you went and got the shit, put it in your body, and you got results. Now, the second time you used, did you use off of belief or faith? But most of y'all think believing in faith is the same thing. They're on two different ends of the spectrum. They're so far apart. Now, how many of y'all have never did the steps the way the book says? Y'all can all raise y'all's hands because none of y'all have. Now, so do you know what the program will offer you? No, because you've never. Now, right now, sitting where you sit, do you have to know? Thank God for you. No, you just have to or be willing to believe. Some of y'all ain't even fucking willing to believe. You think you can just come through here and go through the motions, finish the program, they let you off, and everything's going to be fine. And based on that belief, that's what you're going to do. Now, you take the same process that you use to destroy yourself, and you put it to this program. The first thing I got to do is believe that this might just help me. And if I believe it strong enough, I'm going to make, I'm going to take, that's the steps. And I'm going to get results. And when I started to get the result they told me I'm going to get, I'm going to go, this fucking shit. It really does. But everything you do in this program in life is going to start out with a simple belief. Now, your beliefs, how well are they working? If you believe wrong, make some bad decisions. You will take some messed up actions, and the results you get will be disastrous. And after a while, you will know you're full of shit. Now, believing is so powerful and important in this program, they devote one whole chapter to the power of believing. It's called We Agnostics. That whole chapter deals with one thing: the power of believing. Now, in that chapter, they talk about Christopher Columbus. They talk about the Wright brothers. Now, the very first time they had me studying that chapter, and I'm reading about Columbus and the Wright brothers, I'll go, what in the fuck does this have to do with me not smoking crack anymore? It went right over my head. It had everything to do with it. How many of y'all have ever heard of Columbus? He invented the airplane.
No.
That's right.
They still teach that shit in school?
Yeah.
Huh? Do they? No shit. How many of y'all know Columbus was an alcoholic? He had to have been. He's the only little sumbitch in the world that said the world was round. Everybody else said flat. This one little drunk keeps telling everybody, it's round. So like those alcoholics, because we the only one that believes our shit. Now, Columbus told people, I'm going to go east by sailing west. Now that's a fucking drunk statement.
Right.
When Columbus landed, he didn't know where he was at. Sound like a drunk on top of. When he got back, he didn't know where he had been. Sound like a drunk. But what really made him an alcoholic, a woman financed the whole trip, not once, but now, the first time Columbus sailed, did Columbus know that the world was round? No. He just believed it strong enough where he made, he took,
Action.
and got.
Result.
Now, the very first time Columbus sailed, did he know the world was round? He just
Believe.
So he hired this special sailor. He was about 7'8", and he had a wingspan about 20 foot. And he hired him for one purpose. At night, when it started getting dark, he put that dude on the front of the ship with a lantern, and he told him, look, I want you to hold this lantern out as far as you can. And if you see the fucking edge of this some bitch, you holler. Because he didn't.
No,
He just.
believe.
Now, the second time he sailed, did he believe the world was round or did he know?
He do.
Guess who he didn't bring with him?
Oh boy, oh boy.
How many of y'all are convinced y'all know this doesn't work and you've never fucking done it? It just blows my mind to watch some of y'all in here. You got the opportunity of your life and you go, I don't want to be here. I mean, it's just laid at your damn feet. And y'all come in here and you say, I love thy family. If you did, see, if you really love that little girl like you say you did, I wouldn't have to tell you to pick that goddamn book up, whatever. Whatever. See, if your families knew what kind of effort you were putting in here, would they say, hey, that's pretty good? Or would they go, what are you doing? What are you doing? What would yours say? Hey, what are you doing? What would yours say?
What am I doing?
See, how many of them would go, man, I'm proud of you for the effort you put. You've never put an effort like that into anything. What would yours say? Young gun? No.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, my people be good.
So since you've walked in the front door, you've given us everything you got. Okay, only you know that. You're the only one that knows that. What would yours say?
Hey,
Okay, what would yours say? What would you, not that you came here, but what you're doing here. What are your actions showing? What would yours say? How many of y'all, if they really followed you around here 24/7, after about 3 days, they would go, hey, you know you can do more than that. You know you can do more than that. What would yours say? You could do more?
You're trying.
Okay, look, only you know that. I don't know that. But the next time that you really think about whether you love those people, ask yourself if you're putting everything you got into this, because at home, they're hoping and praying you do. Now, everything I do starts with a simple, if I believe I can sit through here and go through the motion, I'm going to decide to do that. The actions I take won't be very good, and the results I get won't be good. And when I go out there and start using again, I will know why. Okay. Now, how many of y'all, he's just walking, y'all look up here. How many of y'all have ever heard of the Wright brothers? Okay, the Wright brothers built the first contraption that actually flew. Now, how many of y'all have ever heard of Langley Air Force Base? One of the most strategic Air Force bases we have, and it was named after this cat named Professor Langley. He was an aeronautical genius, and he wrote all these books on how to fly. Now, he builds this contraption, and he has it finished, and he's ready to test fly. So he sends out this news wire. They called it news wires back then. They call it the fucking internet now. And he had about 300 newspaper men showed up. And Professor Langley's contraption, for it to be a successful flight, it had to get up off the ground, make a lap, and land. His went down the runway, and it didn't go up. It went off the fucking runway and sank in the Potomac Lake. You know what those newspaper men wrote? They wrote, "Man would never fly." If Professor Langley couldn't do it, it couldn't be done. And God had reserved that right for the birds. Now, the Wright brothers, they were not aeronautical engineers. They weren't aeronautical geniuses. They were fucking actually high school dropouts. Now, it's sort of hard for a high school dropout to believe they could build a contraption that would fly after Langley couldn't do it. And they were actually bicycle fucking mechanics. But guess what they believed? They could do it. They made, look, they got. Now, when their contraption was finished and they were ready to test fly, they sent out the same news wire, and not one of those newspaper men showed up. When they flew their contraption at Kitty Hawk, it got up off the ground, it made a lap, and landed. The first successful flight. And none of those newspaper men, when they found out, would print it. Not one of them. Because if they did, it would prove them wrong. How many of y'all won't try this? Because it's going to prove all your little theories and shit wrong. See, how many of y'all walk around, y'all talk shit about people who got their shit together? And the reason you talk shit about them, because you ain't got to do it. But most of y'all won't try this, because it'll prove all your little theories and ideas and beliefs wrong. This is one time I was glad to be proved wrong. Now, the Wright brothers. High school dropouts, bicycle mechanics. That's just about as hard to believe an alcoholic like you could get sober and change their life. Are you? Are you? See, how many of y'all, people sort of look at you and you look at yourself like you're down for the count? How many of y'all deep down in the back of your mind you go, yeah, this ain't gonna end well. And then you'll start hoping against hope that maybe somehow, someday, you'll pull out of this little tailspin on your own. Look, people like me, you may not be like me, I don't know. When this starts changing, these start changing. And when these start changing, that starts changing. And when that starts changing, that starts changing. Now, I don't broadcast this a lot anymore. When I got here, I was homeless. Look, if you've never been homeless, it's not fun. And look, homeless doesn't mean you don't have a home. That's not what homeless means. If you got couches to jump to, you got a car to stay in, even if the fucker don't run, you ain't homeless. Homeless means you got nowhere to go, and the best you can come up with is under. That's homeless. And I had a garbage bag with everything I owned in it when I got here. I can go get a picture of me in the Baton Rouge newspaper in the most wanted section. That's where I had ended up. And people didn't want nothing to do with me. Now, I'm a convicted felon. That's why when y'all keep telling me excuses you got about doing this, I go, that's bullshit. If I can, you can. If I can, you can. If I can, you can. Now, those results that I got, if you looked at that picture of me in the most wanted section, you would think I had been raised by a bunch of fucking heathens. And I was raised in a damn good family, a loving family that taught me just like yours, and yours, and yours, and yours. And I looked at myself one day and go, how in the hell did you get here? Now, I'm going to give you some okay results that I've gotten, see, that I've gotten since I've taken different, because I've made different, because I believe different. Where I went to treatment as a client, I ended up running the bitch. A client. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good result for somebody like me. And you may not be like me. Now, I went back to school, which I am fucking horrible at. Pursuing a degree in psychology, and they are some fucking idiots. And I got a license to be a substance abuse counselor. Not one, but two governors of the great state of Louisiana appointed me to the Addictive Disorders Regulatory Authority. That's a board that licensed all the substance abuse counselors in this state. Now, you tell me that ain't a good result for somebody like me. Now, I got a contract with the Department of Corrections to go in a penitentiary and teach this shit 3 nights a week. 3 nights. Now, the first week I walked in there, when that fucking door slammed, I went, motherfucker. Walking out of it, it just opens up, I go, Jesus Christ, this is nice. Now, that's just the okay shit. Somebody homeless now. My house, I got a spread, and no, I wouldn't tell y'all where the fuck is at. But I sit on my couch sometimes. I got windows go all the way across the back of my house and it overlooks about 2 acres. And sometimes I'll go, yep, it's yours. Yep, it's yours. And the whole journey, I choose character over comfort. Every time. How many of y'all choose comfort over character? And you get some real temporary comfort, don't you? But you never gain character. You never do. You're like a fucking ship at sea without a rudder. Whatever the way wind blows, that's the way you go. Now, I'm going to give you the good results that I've got by tapping into that. Because all that shit I just told you, I didn't do it. I'm a father today. Hey, a father. You know, God's got a funny sense of humor. And I tell you, we some ass backwards people. I'm 60 years old and I got a 2-year-old. Guess who she hollers for when she wakes up in the morning? That's right. Guess what I changed? You better believe it. Guess who wants to follow me around every step of the way? I don't know about you. That's a good result, somebody like me. The same family who told me, if you show up on our property, we will call the law and have you taken off in cuffs. That same father, guess who's the executor in his estate today? He picks me, tells me, hey, I need you to meet me at the bank today. I go, okay. We go in there, he goes, I want you to put him on my account. And I'm sitting there, I don't say nothing. I'm about to fucking shock this fucking. The woman across goes, is your name Kevin James? And I go, yeah. She goes, you work at Woodlake, don't you? I go, yeah. She goes, I've heard about you. And a big old smile comes across his face. How many of y'all, if you went to your mother right now and you told her, hey, I need to use your car and I need $500. I'll be back tomorrow. What would she tell you? Your own mama. What would she tell you? Yeah. But you come in here and you have the opportunity to change that and you slouch down in your seat like you just ain't even interested. Am I reading it wrong or not? Yeah. I'm reading it wrong? Okay. All right. But I've been wrong before. I hope I'm wrong this time for you, her, and the daughter's sake. Now, how many of y'all want good results like that? When I was sitting where you were sitting and people came and talked to us and told us shit like that, this is what I said. Yeah, that happens to other people. That happens to other people. That ain't gonna happen for me. And then one day I went, why the fuck not me? Why not me? If I do what they say and it don't work, I can go back to them and say, y'all some lying motherfuckers. But if it does work, I've struck gold. See, if it don't work, look, I make a deal with everybody that comes through treatment. If you do this for 1 year, first 103 pages of the book for 1 year, 1 year, exactly like it says. If you don't like the results you get, bring me your big book back and I will refund all of your misery. Now, I've been doing this about 20 years. And I ain't never had one person bring me their big book back. Because if they doing it, guess what they would never give me? That's right. And if they ain't, they can't find the motherfucker to bring it back anyway. Now, how many of y'all up here you going, oh man, this fucking sucks the way I'm doing shit. But you won't tell nobody that. Because if they ask you, man, how you doing? You go, fine, I'm good. I'm doing good. And deep down, you won't tell nobody what's really going on. Now will you? But see, your pride and your ego, it won't let you. Guess what a good ass kicking administered by drugs and alcohol will chip away? Pride and ego. I want y'all to turn y'all's big books to page 44. The name of the chapter is called We Agnostic. What's your name, young man? Perry? Where you from? Springfield. Really? What side of the interstate? The right side? Going down the interstate. Right side of Springfield? Okay. By the river? Okay. Boy, I used to spend my summers on that river. Boy, everybody come moved over there and fucked it up. All right, it says we agnostics. We're on page 44. I want everybody following along. It says in the preceding chapter. Now, the preceding chapter, that would be the doctor's opinion, Phil's story, we're on alcoholism, and there is a solution. 4 chapters. Now, this is what they've been trying to get across to you in 4 chapters. Look up here. 4 chapters. Now, for those of y'all who are sort of slow like I was, they're going to sum 4 chapters up in about 5 sentences because they don't want to leave anybody behind. It says, we hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. Look up here. That would be or if when shooting heroin, you have little control over the amount you take. Look up here. That is. So in about 5 sentences, they summed up 4 chapters. They telling you about this obsession that's condemning you to keep going on, and the allergy that's going to destroy you in the process. Says you have little control over the amount you take, you probably alcoholic. Now, why do you think they tell you you probably alcoholic? Why don't you think they just say, hey, you fucking alcoholic? Because it won't do any. How long have people been telling you, hey, you got a damn problem, and it's done absolutely no good until you say, I got, you really don't have a problem. Look, if you were catching a cold, how many of y'all, your eyes start itching and you go, damn, I got something in my eye. Then your throat starts getting a little rough and you go, damn, I got something caught in my throat. And then finally you go, damn, I think I'm catching. That's when you can take some medicine. See, how many of y'all been having a cold for a long time, but you haven't wanted to take the medicine. says if that be the case, if what's the case, you got the obsession and the allergy, if that's the case, you suffering, and boy are you suffering, from an illness, which only a spiritual awakening will conquer. Now, I don't know what you just got out of that, but if you don't really have this little personality change or spiritual awakening, you dead in the water. You dead in the water. Now, if you actually study the first 103 pages of the book, they give you the same two alternatives all through the book. They switch it around and they give you different words and shit, but they give you the same two alternatives. Look, they tell you this or that. How many of y'all sitting here, your head's clearing up a little bit, and you think you got a bunch of decisions to make? You've missed the fucking boat again. How many of y'all got? Get a job. Got to get the kids back. Got to get a phone. Got to get a car. Got to get a wifey poo back. How many of y'all think y'all got a bunch of decisions to make? When really, you only got two choices. Remain as you are, or seek that. Now, let's just say for shits and giggles, you stay like this, but they let you have the child back. The wife lets you come home. Somebody hires you at a good job. You're like this. What will happen? Will you keep the kid? The job? You'll lose it again. So really you have two choices. As you are, or seek this. You know, it's just amazing to watch one of us sober up. All of a sudden we think we got more fucking business than the president has. And we want to make all these decisions when really we only have choices. Now, people like me who come get over there, the majority of us, family gets real simple. The material shit just comes and comes. And all that shit starts taking care of itself if I'm over there. You know, you looking at somebody who couldn't even fucking afford a hoopty. I'd have loved to have a hoopty. You know how many cars I got in my fucking name where I got the title? And two of them, they fine ass motherfuckers. They fine. I got a 78 little adapted 280Z, look like it come off the showroom floor. Sure. And it's mine. I don't know about you. That's a pretty good result for somebody like me. How many of y'all in here? Y'all want that shit? Don't you? But you don't want to do the work. Look, over the years, have I had to do a lot of shit I didn't want to do? Yeah. Yeah. I had to pay bills and this and that instead of going and buy something I really wanted. So I had to choose character over comfort. Now, over the years of doing that, guess what I have gained a lot of? Character. Integrity. When I tell somebody I'm going to do something, they know me, they take it to the bank. Ain't nothing in their mind that goes, if he's going to really do it this time. And by choosing comfort over character over comfort, guess what comes with that? conference. And guess who gave me that conference? No, hell no. God. See, when God gives it to me, I keep it. I keep it. But when I go snatch and grab it, I may get it temporarily, but guess who makes sure I don't keep it? That's right. So you keep snatching and grabbing and see what happens. Back in the book. It says, to one who feels he's an atheist or an agnostic, such an awakening seems impossible. Now, I want you to look up here. I want you to be honest with yourself. How many of y'all, when we start talking about a spiritual awakening, you go, oh, shit. How many of y'all? Look, when I was sitting where you were sitting, and they started telling me about the solution, I've got to take these steps and have a spiritual awakening, my mind went, whoo. The reason it did, I equated spirituality with religion. Now, I know none of y'all in here do that. Now, I used to believe that in order to be spiritual, you had to be religious. Now, I know today that's not true. Because I know a lot of religious people who ain't too damn spiritual. And I know a lot of spiritual people who ain't too damn religious. Now, saying that, I'm going to say this. I know a lot of religious people who are very, very spiritual. But how many of y'all get the two confused? How many of y'all, when we start talking about a spiritual awakening, you think of something like this? I got to join the church and sing in the choir. Look, there's a lot of people who did not want me to join the church and sing in the choir. The two have nothing to do with each other. Absolutely nothing. Now, a lot of people disagree with me on this, and it's okay. I've had a lot of people disagree with me before. I sort of look at spirituality and religion like this. Spirituality, God made. And religion, and man is very, very fallible. Back in the book. To one who feels he's an atheist or an agnostic, such an awakening seems impossible. But to continue as he is, look up here. To continue as he is means disaster. Especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. Hopeless means the same thing as powerless. To be doomed to an alcoholic death, look up here. Or, what's it say? Live on a spiritual basis. Look up here. They tell you it's not always easy alternatives to face. Now, how many choices did they give you? Remain as you are, or, and they tell you that all through the book. They just change the wording around and put different shit first and second, so you'll think you're learning some new shit. But they tell you the same two things all through the book. Stay as you are, or seek that. Now, if you want to stay as you are, nobody cannot make you do that. We can't make you do this. And if you choose to stay here, as Bobby Brown said, that's your prerogative. But shut the hell up. Quit whining about the results you get and just take it. Because that's what you asked for. That's what you asked for. See, how many of y'all Y'all stay over here, and when you start getting those results, you go, why is this happening to me? If that's what you want, you okay with it? I'm okay with it. But shut the hell up and take what's coming to you. And the ones of us that come over here, what we really tell people through our actions is what that does. The reason I tell you some of these results in here is so I can maybe get you to start to. I ain't bragging. I ain't got nothing to brag about because I didn't do it. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. See, they're telling you, half of the people who started this and wrote this book, just like you, a lot of doubt. A lot of doubt. Look, what do you have to lose? Let's say you did it, just like we said, and it didn't work. What have you lost? What have you lost? Yeah, but you've been losing that. So really, nothing. And if you do it and it works, you struck gold. Because I'm telling you, when I was sitting where y'all were sitting, I had a lot of doubt. And I went, you know what? I'm going to do this shit, just like they say. And if it don't work, I'm going back up to this fucking treatment center, and I'm going to tell them they full of shit. I went to treatment for 28 days. I stayed 12 years. Because I couldn't tell them it didn't work. So I said, well, fuck, let's just run it. It says at first some of us tried to avoid the issue. See, how many of y'all go, well, you know, I'm not really alcoholic. I don't really have a problem. They do. How many of y'all have been hoping against hope that you really wasn't one of us? It says, but after a while, look up here. After a while of getting your ass kicked some more. It says, you had to face the fact. You must find the spiritual basis of life, or, look at here. You must find the spiritual basis of life, or else. Same two alternatives, different wording. And that's what they tell you all through the book. Perhaps it's going to be that way with you. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheist or agnostic. Our experience shows you need not be disconcerted. What that means is don't get your little panties in an uproar. How many of y'all are debating this shit? In your head, you're debating whether it works or it don't. You know, they tell us early on in another little book called The 12 and 12, resign from the fucking debating society. This works. Now, how many of y'all have ever seen a bumper sticker that says, just do it? Nike makes it. And it says, just do it. Quit debating it, shut the hell up, and just do it. And if it don't work, in a couple of 3 or 4, 8 months, you can say, shit don't work. Up to this point, comments. We ain't finished, but comments. Questions. All right, back in the book. I want you to go over to the first paragraph on page 45. It says, lack of money, that was my dilemma. Huh? What is that?
Lack of power.
So if I'm lacking power, that means I am
Powerless.
powerless.
Come on.
Now, lack of power, that was my dilemma. How many of y'all know what a dilemma actually means? What? A dilemma means you got two choices and you don't fucking like either one. That's a dilemma. Now, how many of y'all want to go back and do this and keep losing shit like you've been doing? But how many of y'all really, really want to seek that power? So what are you facing? A fucking dilemma. Look up here. I want you to look up here and listen to this. You get nothing else out of today. I want you to listen to this. How many of y'all know what this will get you? How you know? All right. How many of y'all know what that'll get you? You don't. Now, I got these two choices and I don't like. I know. I don't know. I know. Don't want that. So it only really leaves me one choice. Now, how many of y'all in here have ever had a toothache? Most of us do. Now, when you get a toothache and it first starts hurting, I mean, it just barely starts. How many of y'all drop every fucking thing you're doing and run to the dentist and jump in his chair and go? Who loves to go to the dentist? Nobody. We got to get you some other help then. How many of y'all will try to bear the pain of the tooth for a little while so you don't have to go to the dentist? Now, how many of y'all go, I think I can take care of itself? And it keeps getting
Worse.
and when that son of a bitch pain gets unbearable, how many of y'all can't wait to get to the dentist? Now, for a long time, I had a little old toothache that didn't cause me a lot of pain, and I really didn't want to go to the dentist. When that son of a bitch, the pain became unbearable, I couldn't wait to get to the dentist. I told you this program's ass backwards. What I wanted for a long time is now what I don't want. And what I didn't want for a long time is now what I want. It's crazy how us alcoholics operate. Last thing, we'll get out of here. Says I had to find a power by which I could live. How many of y'all really have not lived in a long time? I can remember about 7, 8, 9 years old. I got two powers greater than me managing my life. They called them a mommy and a daddy. It's the fucking best it's ever been. I didn't have any worry, no problem. I'm playing with fucking G.I. Joe and shit. The best it's ever been. About 10, 9, somewhere around there. Guess who started running the show? Guess who started managing shit? And shit went off the damn rails. And until I got into this program, I've never lived like that. See, today, the last 20-something years is like playing with G.I. Joe again. The fear, the worry. How many of y'all, if you didn't have a bunch of fears and worries, you wouldn't find it necessary to put something in you to change the way you felt? If you had to live in your own skin right now sober, I would bet my house, which is almost damn near paid for, you couldn't. Says we had to find a power by which we could live. And it had to be a power greater than. Now, they put that in that scribbly ass writing. Who knows what kind of writing that is? Huh? Yes, that's what it is. That's what educated people call it. You know what those drunks call it? Drunk ass writing. Now, when somebody puts that kind of writing in a book, they're trying to make a very important point. And that point is, it's got to be a power greater than yourself. Now, did it say equal? Less than? It said greater than. Now, I want you to look to the left and the right of you. Do you see any powers greater than you in this room? Do you see any powers less than you in this room? I see a lot of powers. So what they telling me is humans not the answer. And if I just go to meetings, which is made up of humans, it won't work. Now, how many of y'all, this power greater than yourself, you've looked everywhere for it? In money, in relationships, in cars, in dope, in alcohol. You look everywhere for it, except where the hell it actually is. And the fundamental idea of God is deep down within you. And that little voice that you hear the first time say, don't do that. That's what they're talking about. How many of y'all have never, ever looked deep down in yourself? Every time you get a glimpse, you go, oh, fuck that shit. Boom. Now, after they make that statement, got to be a power greater than ourselves, they back it up with a one-word sentence.
Obviously.
Yeah. When somebody puts a statement in italicized writing and backs it up with a one-word sentence, this is what they're telling you. Hey, dumbass. The point we just made is very, very important. Now, close your books. We're going to leave y'all with this one. When God created everything, they say it took him about 7 days. He worked quick. So the angels come to God and they say, God, we're going to build you a throne up on the highest mountain. We're going to put you up there. God thought about it a minute. He said, nah, don't put me up there. Man will get up there and find me and ruin everything. So the angel said, well, we're going to build you a throne at the bottom of the sea. God thought about it for a minute. He said, nah, man will eventually get down there and find me and ruin everything. So the angel said, well, where do you want us to put you in all that? God thought for a minute. He said, I tell you what, put me deep down, every man, woman, and child, they never look there.
Oh, damn.
How many of y'all look everywhere except where God actually is? Now I want you to check this out. When you get ready to do something wrong, which is quite often, and you know it's wrong, do you hear a little voice say, hey, dumbass, don't do that? Now, if it's something really wants to do you block that voice out? Huh? If it's something you really want to do, you block it out. And you do what? Now, when you do what self wants to do, knowing it's wrong, do you normally face consequences? And when the consequences start hitting, does that voice come back a little louder a second time and say? No. It says, hey, dumbass, I told you not to do that. You hear that? What you call it? Huh? God? Well, most people do. Call that their conscience. I'll prove to you it's not. I'll prove it to you. The first time you hear that voice say, hey, don't do that, has it always been right? If you went to rob a bank, and they had 5 police cars in the parking lot, would you hear a little voice say, hey, don't rob that bank? Now, 10 times out of 10, it would be, okay. Now, every time you get ready to do something wrong and you know it's wrong, that first voice that tells you, hey man, don't do that, I promise you it's always been right. And there's only one entity in this universe that's always right, and it sure as fuck ain't your conscience. See, look here, check this out. When you block that first voice out, which is always right, that's the fundamental idea of God. When you block it out and do what you want, that's your conscience. That's why your ass is sitting in here. Now, we're going to go a step further. How many of y'all in here had dreams and aspirations? You wanted to be something when you were growing up. Now, don't tell me if you Gage. How tall are you, Gage? Shit, that's fucking standing on high heels. Don't tell me that when you grew up, you wanted to play center for the Los Angeles Lakers. I want you to tell me something real plausible. You were growing up, what did you want to be?
Happy, that's what I wanted. Ball player, I had dreams and aspirations.
Wanted to play music.
What'd you want to be? You wanted to do something besides what you was doing. What'd you want to be? 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 Now, let's just say for shits and giggles, every time you heard that voice say, hey, don't do that, what are the chances you would be as successful that somebody else turn wrenches and you just collected the money mechanic? Huh? Pretty good, huh? What'd you say? What are the chances you'd be down there playing music successfully, sober and happy? Yeah. What'd you say?
Football player.
If you would have listened to that first voice all the time, would you have had an opportunity? And you? Okay. Guess who planted that idea in your head? Huh? What? Yeah. And every time you got ready to stray from the path, you said, hey man, don't do that. Guess who planted that in your head? Yeah. And every time you got ready to stray from the path, he said, hey, don't do that. And how many of y'all's lives are in shambles and you blame God? And he's going, trying to tell you what to do. You just won't listen. Comments. Boy, you real quiet back there, ain't you? Hold on a minute.